How's the Detroit Sports Podcast going?
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest Doc and Jock podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. I think the greatest thing that's happened to the podcast is now Adam is 300 miles away in Indiana. I think this podcast is going to explode through the roof because now I can say whatever I want, and Adam can't do anything about it, baby. What up, cuz?
Joining you remotely from the palatial DSPN estates in Indiana. This is crazy.
What was your first 5 days there like? I know everyone heard your final show there. Very emotional. It's good stuff. I think in radio sometimes you don't get a chance to have that send-off. It's like one day you're on the air and the next there's somebody else filling your seat and you're like, what happened? They gave you, Big Drew and Jim gave you the proper send-off. You and Brendan did a great job. And I think that in terms of radio, that's one proper way to be sent off, to be given the respect that you guys were due. And good job to you, man. And what's it been like?
Yeah, those guys are awesome. Absolutely held me and Brendan down. It was great. It was emotional. The moment that we ended up going off air, we switched to, we went to the break and we went to Fox Sports programming afterwards. I was so sad. Like it was quiet in the studio. Shay was sitting to my right, and I just kind of took my headphones off and I just kind of sat there for a second, like, damn, it's done. It was so sad. It was so emotional for me. But the last couple of days in Indiana have been pretty good. Spending a lot of time at the gym, trying to find a job as well. So it's just kind of trying to feel everything out right now. It's not the way I think either one of us wanted this whole situation to kind of play out. And it just is what it is. So you just kind of roll with it. You just make do.
Yeah, you make do, and I think that's the thing that I always look at is sometimes things happen for a reason. And I think, too, in regards to you and your situation, you know, you can't discount what it's like to be close to someone that you love. And obviously, you have a pet, you have your wife, you have a lot going on. And so sometimes work does have to take a backseat a little bit. And I know you're a career-driven guy. You have a lot of big goals, and you're going to reach them. But sometimes, like you said, there are certain situations that you go, oh, wow. You know, you get into them, and then when you take some time away, you recognize, you know what, I can get into better. I deserve better, and you deserve a lot better than what you were in. Definitely, no doubt about it, and I think bigger and better things are ahead, and that's what you should always be looking for. Bigger and better things, like with the podcast, like with opportunities that you're going to find, like with skills that you're building now. When you're forced to, you know, put out applications and reinvent yourself and things like that, I think it's all good for you, brother. And hopefully you keep your head held high. You did great work, man. Everyone noticed it. Like I said, I read all the tweets and things like that, and everyone was definitely impressed with the stuff you did over there. And at least in Grand Rapids, you're a legend.
I don't know if I go a legend, but let's just say I was a curveball. Like Jim said, I was a curveball for what they expected and what they got. So I'm a different kind of dude. But I mean, since we have this platform and we have this time, you want to just talk about it. And basically, the reason I ended up leaving, you want to talk about that, or do you want to save that for some other time?
It's up to you, man. I think that it's an interesting story to tell. You've told it. I'd love to hear your version of it again. You left there because of what?
So basically, DFN has been dying forever and a day. At one time, it was the sports powerhouse in the Detroit area, and it has basically been left dormant. They were cool enough to give Ryan Elke and myself a Sunday show doing Lions pregame. I thought we did a really good job with that. I thought as the season wore on, we grew, and I think we grew into our roles. And if you listen to the very first show to the last show, I think you see a ton of growth there, and I think you see a better show at the end. And we were trying to push the envelope, and we were trying to get more local programming. The big issue with the station is it's all Fox programming, and that's fine. But here in Detroit, nobody wants to listen to national people talk about national things. They want to hear Detroiters talk about Detroit things. And we were pushing for that. And we ran into a bunch of different roadblocks. We came up with a bunch of different ideas to try to work around different things that were kind of plaguing the station. And when presented to upper management, so the way it kind of works there is I have my program director who's my immediate boss. Then he has his boss. And then he has his boss. So I went right to the top. I went to the absolute top dog. And he's the coolest guy in the world. Paul is an absolute G. He is the most interesting man in the world. He is the Dos Equis commercial guy. That's Paul all day. So me and Paul went to lunch. We talked about a couple different things. Paul got on board with a couple different ideas I threw at him. Seemed like we were going in the right direction. He then went and got with the senior vice president, the guy who was underneath him, to see what was actually feasible and what they could make work. And that's kind of where it ran into a roadblock, and it just kind of stalled out. I had set up a couple different meetings and went and talked to the senior vice president. I was like, hey, what can we do? What about this? What do you think about this? And I presented a couple different ideas similar to what I presented to Paul. And at the time, I was told I have 5 other stations that are a priority. DFN is not a priority. That's a total gut shot when you spend your entire day trying to come up with ideas or trying to put something together to bring a show and bring a station back to life. It's a total gut shot. So he was like, just send me an email with some of your ideas and we'll see what we can do. And I said, okay, cool. Like, good little soldier. I was pissed. I went back to my studio, sat there, and I was like, well, why the hell am I going to even send you this email if you're not going to do anything about it? But then I was like, no. Take a shot, see what happens. Sent an email, sent all kinds of different ideas. I got a response back. Cool, we'll look into this and we'll see what happens. And basically 5 months went by with nothing. And at that time, I went to my then immediate boss. And mind you, I kind of skirted all the way around him. I went to my immediate boss and I was like, you're not planning to do anything with me, right? He was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, I want more. You're not going to do anything else with me, right? And he's like, well, I just don't know what we can do. And at that point, I was like, all right, cool. I am killing my marriage, and I am essentially wasting my time here. I love the show with Drew and Jim. I think it's great. I think it's a fantastic show. You know me. The whole reason I got into sports talk radio was because of Mike Valeni. Mike Valeni was the guy who I held up at the highest esteem. Me personally, right now with what Valeni does with his show, I think it's a very good show. I think Drew and Jim do a little bit more of an entertaining show. Some of the stuff that Valeni talks about, I just don't know why the hell he's talking about it on air. It doesn't make any sense to me. So that being said, I was ecstatic to work for that program. I love that show. I think they do a great job. And I feel bad because they're on such a putrid station that doesn't have great reception. It's absolutely brutal. I mean, they kill it in Grand Rapids. And I think they do a very good job in Detroit with the limited capabilities that they have. So all that being said, I was like, look, man, I've sacrificed so much, and it's just, right now, it's just killing my marriage. Because at this time, Lorraine and I were arguing every week, maybe every day. It got nasty. So I was like, why am I doing this? Why? For what? You're not going to do anything with me. This isn't going to go anywhere. So I was like, I'm out. I'm going to give you as much time as you need to find a replacement, figure it out, and I will train them, and we'll get everything taken care of. And I basically gave them a month's notice, and they got Shay in there, and we'll see what happens. So I wish Shay all the best. I've been in contact with Drew and Jim already, so everything seems to be good. And, I mean, I think they do a fantastic show. If you guys haven't checked them out, check them out. Go to the iHeartRadio app and go to WDFN 3 to 6. I think they do a fantastic job. Very good job.
Yeah, eventually speaking, like you said, you would tell me, you ran all those ideas by him, and then you're hopeful, and then basically what you're hearing back is that, hey, we're here and we're not going to do nothing. It's just like, hey, more of the same over and over and over. And at that point, you decided, hey, the cons far outweigh the pros for you, and I think you made the right choice. And especially, too, because it's really tough because everybody looks at ratings and everybody looks at what's going on, and you got one show on DFN and then nothing else surrounding it. You have no support, and everyone's looking like, you got a 0 rating, and everyone's like, what's going on? There's no station. And everyone, at the end of the day, perception is reality. And everyone that supports DFN realizes the station's not doing enough to compete, especially in the world of sports. They're just there. And everyone that knows, that's paying attention, that's looking into it, realizes, okay, DFN's just there. It's just a station, but there's no momentum. There's nothing going on. And for talent, you can't just sit there day in and day out and just be like, okay, I'm going to be behind the scenes here. And especially when there's an issue that's brought up, nobody wants to wait 6 months for any issue to be taken care of. It's like, look, it could have been ran up the chain of command in a week and said, look, Adam, this is what it's going to be. And then you say 5 months. And that's the biggest complaint that I hear in radio is that people that tell me is that, everyone has great ideas, but they're stifled because of the fact that there's no control. You got to run things up by 5 people. And that's why, I love this podcast is you and I run an idea. We implement it the next day. We go, oh, that sucked. Let's not do that again. Or we just say we do this, we do that, we try this, we come up with ideas, we approve them, deny them, and we do it instantly. And I think that's what's so great about doing things by yourself is that you don't have to really be restricted by 8 people. And at the end of the day, look, I believe your programmers that you worked with, they want to do better. But at the end of the day, you have to answer to corporate. And when corporate is not invested heavily and there's nothing moving forward, this is what you get. And Big Drew and Jim, look, they've succeeded despite being on DFN, and we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, DFN isn't really going anywhere. They've become stagnant, and everybody knows it. And so for someone like you don't want to be part of that. You deserve better. You deserve a lot better, especially, look, our little office here in Sterling Heights rivals what's going on over there at DFN. You go and you go, man, if I spread my arms out, I'm hitting a couple of walls and I'm hitting everybody. It's like, man, DFN used to be something different, and now it's not. And you've moved on. I think it's great for you, great for your family, and that's what's something that you deserve. No doubt about it.
Let me put it to you like this. There was an offer on the table for me to do a live read. And if you don't work in radio, just so you know, you make all your money basically by signing your contract if you're good enough. And if you're not good enough to get a fat deal like Mojo has, then what you do is you get your money by doing live reads or doing commercial reads. There was a deal on the table. They just needed somebody to voice it. And I said, hell yeah, sign me up. I will voice this. It was for Roman, which is like a male enhancement, almost like hymns, right? So everybody knows about hymns. Everybody knows about Roman. And nobody wanted to voice it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to do it. I said, I don't give a shit. I'll do it, whatever you want. So basically, it was like a $300 deal sitting there for me. All I had to do was just do a read, 1 or 2 a day, and it's extra money for me. Somehow that deal just evaporated. Nobody ever ended up doing the read. Nobody ended up ever doing anything, and it just kind of disappeared into the ether. You can't have your salespeople who are trying to bring money into a station, which is dying on the vine, let stuff like that walk out the door. And that's just kind of the dysfunction for that specific station. All the other stations are ran pristinely. None of that would ever happen with any of the other stations, but that one station, stuff like that happens all the time. It's just money that walks out the door.
Oh, hell no. That can't ever happen. It's like, come on. That's where the lifeblood is. That's where motivation is. And especially if someone's like, I want to do it, let's sign it up, sign the deal, ink the paper. It's not that hard to do. And I think that's where when you say there's too many cooks in the kitchen or too many things fall through the cracks, that's why people leave. And it's unfortunate, in terms of your situation. But at the end of the day, you look forward. And you deserve better. And hopefully it's around the corner. Just keep at it. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, man, we'll keep plugging away. I mean, for the most part, everything that happened at DFN was either because of me or at the time when Ryan was working, we would kind of tag team everything and we would discuss different things that were going on. So
like everything?
Like everything. So anything that you've seen that was posted for social media, anything that was basically done for that station was done because of me and Ryan. And then Ryan left and then it all kind of fell onto my plate. And it was a lot to do. It was only me for a little bit, but it was a ton to do for for two guys who were essentially part-time and nobody wanted to give us basically a bone. We just kind of took it and we ran with it. So it's what it was, man. I think we did good work for having having one hand tied behind our backs.
You can follow Adam on Twitter, continue his journey at AdamRSTROZ. And one of the benefits of you leaving was I got a chance to tell everybody, hey, you still do a podcast twice a week. You're still on the airwaves, and you do a better show here than you did ever at DFN, in my opinion. So it's all good for the podcast. So it's all good.
I like how you always promote the network.
It's all good, brother. That's what you got to do. And like I said, summer's over basically for media. You know why? It's football season. Everybody's excited. And one of the best things that's happened is, in terms of the Detroit Lions, many people, one of the storylines that freaked people out was the fact that Snacks Harrison and Darius Slay weren't going to show up. Well, eventually speaking, when they realized, oh, shoot, I'm going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars up to $1 million or more if I don't show up, they both showed up. They liked their money. And so one of the early storylines that was worrisome evaporated. They showed up. Now, we still don't know if they've been offered new deals, whether Bob Quinn held his ground and became an OG in my eyes if he doesn't give them new deals. But at the same time, I'll say this. It's very important that guys like Darius Slay and Snacks show up, especially in a critical year two for Matt Patricia. I was thrilled to hear the news. I was a little bit surprised, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was surprised as well. In the back of my head, I'm like, okay, so what's changed now? How do you guys basically go from sending out OTAs to now showing up for minicamp? What has happened? Now, you have to remember, Drew Rosenhaus was supposed to speak with Bob Quinn. So was there a promise made? Like, hey, we will get you a new contract. It'll look something like this. And Rosenhaus went back to both these guys and was like, just go to camp. We're going to get this done. It'll all get taken care of. So I find it really interesting that both these guys, essentially within 24 hours of each other, have said, yeah, we'll be in camp. And they're showing up to camp today on Thursday. So I think it's a great sign. I think it's a good thing. And like you said, this is a critical year two for Matt Patricia. And you've seen what Snacks meant to that defense. The moment he gets plugged into that defense, it totally changed. Everything changed. It became a formidable front, and essentially he was able to shave off more than 45 yards against the rush. That's how impactful he is up front, as well as Darius Slay. Darius Slay had a little bit of a down year in the beginning half of last season. And I think that was a little bit him getting used to Matt Patricia's scheme and trying to adjust to what they were asking him to do. But by the second half of the year, he looked like that Pro Bowl player. It was a down year for him overall, but he looked like a much better player that second half of the season compared to the first half of the season. So both these guys are leaders in that locker room. Slay is very vocal. Snacks is another one who's very vocal. So you need both these guys in that locker room, and I think it's key. I think this is a key win for the organization, for Bob Quinn, and for Matt Patricia to get these guys into camp. They don't have a deal done, or at least it hasn't been reported that a deal's been done yet, but it's important to get these guys in. So I think this is a huge victory for the Lions organization as a whole. I think this is awesome.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I just think it's about money. I mean, when you miss OTAs and things like that, you don't really lose a lot of money. I mean, 80 grand is a lot of money to a lot of people, but to these guys who are making millions, it's just not enough, to motivate them to show up to organized team activities. But, training camp, that's a whole different situation. That's where the heavy fines are levied, and, it really does impact the bottom line. And if you miss, in my opinion, if you miss training camp with this regime, I think the players are recognizing, look, Bob Quinn's not budging. There is this stigma, there is this notion that there is this Patriot way. And sometimes when you push back against management stands firm and says, no, we're not going to do it. And I do think that people that are advising Snacks Harrison and Darius Slay are saying, look, show up. It'll garner good favor, and then you could potentially negotiate in a better situation. Whereas maybe, when you thought that you weren't being paid enough, maybe they'll take care of you in a different way. Maybe there's something else that they can offer you that will entice you, whether it be through community efforts, whether it be through, promises in terms of your role when you retire, stuff like that. So I do think that not burning a bridge is super important for these guys. And at the same time, that defense has a chance to be really strong this year. I mean, there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of potential to say the least. And if you're there, you have an opportunity to continue the momentum, and you have an opportunity to learn and continue to grow in that system. And I do think that for Matt Patricia, it's very important that guys that he brings in, the Patriot guys and the guys that, understand his system, that they come in and they help to change the culture. Because that's one of the big storylines is, are the players going to buy in? Are the players going to go through a wall for Matt Patricia? Are they going to really give all-out effort in order to make, the dreams happen? Because obviously, outside, are you noticing, I think myself too, that, you and I, in terms of the 6 years doing this podcast, we've been pretty fair at times with the Lions, but also, a little bit slanted in terms of our pessimism regarding what the Lions are going to do. But more and more as training camp approached, and as, the layout of the land in terms of what the media thinks, a lot of people are kind of downplaying the Detroit Lions and downgraded them. I'm sure you saw Nate Davis's 3-13 prediction, and we're like, wow, that's pretty bad. But, last year, he was one of the rare people that got it right. He predicted the Detroit Lions to be 6-10, and he thinks there's a lot more question marks regarding the Lions. And I'm like, man, I'm scratching my head, because you and I are kind of in the neighborhood of like, well, we do see steady improvement. We see more talent. Stafford can't be as bad. They should keep him upright. That even though we're down on the Lions, we're in the neighborhood of 7, 8, 9 wins. Is he seeing something that we're not? 3-13 as a prediction freaked everybody out locally.
3-13 and the worst in the NFL. I'm not sure what Nate Davis is looking at here. If you look at what happened with this Detroit Lions team last year, come the second half of the season, they were dramatically different than they were the first half of the season. And I'm expecting Matt Patricia to build upon that second half of the season. I don't know how you get 3-13. Like I said, when we discussed off air, and we're kind of throwing, what do you think they're going to be? Do you think they're going to be 8-8? Do you think they're going to be 7-9, 9-7? Where do you think they're going to fall? So when I look at the schedule and I go through and you do the wins-loss, I come up with 6-10. Okay, taking into account what Matt Patricia did with this team last year in the second half of the season, and then adding a guy like Trey Flowers to the front of that defense. And you're kind of revamping the offense for Matt Stafford, and you're trying to put Matt Stafford in a more advantageous position. And looking at all of that, I'm like, how do you get 3-13? Because I want to give them an extra win, and I want to make it 7-9 for the season, just by taking those things in and factoring them in. This is the one thing I don't think it's talked about enough with Matt Stafford. Last year, Matt Stafford, in his play action passing, he was a top 10 quarterback in the league. And this new offense that they're instilling is supposed to be more play action, and it's supposed to lean a little bit heavier on the run. So Matt Stafford's not going to be as beat up. Here's the thing about Matt Stafford. As the season wears on every single year, the guy is always limping to the finish. Could you imagine if he could start the season healthy and then finish the season relatively healthy? Because nobody makes it through an entire 16-game season healthy. So if he can start the season healthy and then finish it relatively healthy, imagine how good he would perform. And imagine what that means for the Detroit Lions. I have no idea where Nate Davis is coming from with this 3-13 prediction. Essentially, he is saying, hey, it's going to get much, much worse for Matt Patricia, and he obviously doesn't know what he's doing. Hey, bro, I'm not sure what you watched. And I found this funny, too. So last night I was laying in bed. House Hunters just wasn't cutting it for me. It just wasn't doing it for me, and I didn't feel like watching Chopped either. So I was like, well, what the hell else is on? And I go scrolling through the channels, scrolling through. I get to the NFL Network, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I put this on. It was like, I don't know, NFL Today or NFL Insider or some crap like that. I put it on, and I think it's LaDainian Tomlinson and whoever the Asian guy is. I don't remember the Asian guy's name. They're up there, and they're doing wins losses for the Chiefs. And, you know, the Lions and the Chiefs will play, I think it's week 4. And when he gets to the 4th game of the Chiefs season, he's like, it's the Detroit Lions. He's like, I don't even know why we're talking about this. You know it's a win. And I'm just like, it's so casual to just blow the Lions off, just to say, it's a W. They suck. I'm not sure I'm not sure where this perspective from the national media is coming about the Lions being this bad. Like, we knew it was a rough season last year. It was an absolute horrible season. They were embarrassed on national TV when they played the Jets. It was absolutely abysmal. But if you go from game one to the end of the season, it's a totally different team. They look different. They play different. The guys actually bought in as the season wore on. And I'm not saying that's going to be enough to get them into the playoffs, but I don't understand why everybody is saying, 3-13, or the Lions, you just kind of run over them. I don't see that with this team.
You see that?
I just don't buy that.
Yeah, you see them, I think, being in a lot of games because, by nature, the NFL is set up to be basically a one-score game going into the fourth quarter, and whoever executes is going to be the team that wins. And, the teams in the middle, when you compare them to the teams at the top, there's this just small window of plays, a handful of plays, 5 or 6, that will determine, the teams that are successful and those that aren't. So I understand exactly what you're saying, and that's what you and I are screaming about, is that please, Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, change the perception, whereas when people talk about the Lions, they don't bring up the fact that, it's 20 years since Barry quit. Let's bring up the Hail Mary, let's bring up everything that's toxic, and that's why we do it too. Look, if you and I are going to talk about the Chargers, what are we going to expect? They're going to make the playoffs and lose in the first round and choke. That's why, you only have so much time to research. And even the national guys, they're just going, and to answer your question, I just think that they look at it and they go by perception. They go by what they see in terms of the history of the Lions. And quite frankly, it just hasn't been that good. And so you don't, when you play the odds, for those that gamble, it's easier to say, I can just throw out there, the Lions are going to suck, and 7 out of 10 times you're going to be right without even knowing anything. So if you were just to make a straight-up bet, are the Lions going to make the playoffs or not, and you just put
I get that. I totally get that.
See?
But 3-13 and being the worst, being the worst of the NFL, like, where are you coming from with this? Like this is so out of left field. I just don't understand how you can even make that proclamation, and then to be like, they've got to go up the likes of the Vikings and the Packers, and they've got to face them twice. Okay, cool. The Vikings worked the Lions over last year, but the Packers? At what point did the Packers become this team that is, I don't know, held in the same esteem as New England? I don't get that, because Green Bay hasn't really been shit. What has Green Bay really done lately? They've got a brand new head coach who's the rookie head coach, and you mean to tell me that him and Aaron Rodgers are going to all of a sudden mesh and be this perfect symbiotic unit? I don't buy that. I don't see that. I don't understand how that even works. On top of that, if you want to hold Green Bay in the same esteem as you hold teams like the New England Patriots, what did Detroit do to New England last year? They beat the pants off them. They had one of their best games that game of the season. You know what I'm saying? I just don't understand. Like, this is total and utter disrespect. 3-13. That's outrageous. Maybe when we look back on this come January, maybe they are 3-13, and maybe the egg's on our face. I just think Nate Davis is out of touch here. I think he's out of his mind, and I think the guys on NFL Network are out of touch too and out of their mind. Cool. The Detroit Lions historically have sucked forever. We know. We all have lived through it. We understand, okay? All that being said, look at what happened last year, and then look at what they did in the offseason, and then you have to kind of project what's going to happen this season. I think you're going to get a better team than you had last year.
Yeah. And
that's just because guys are going to buy in. And I'm not trying to sell anybody Kool-Aid and cornbread here. I'm definitely not, because, I'll flame this organization whenever I have the chance to if they suck. But if they're doing something right, I will congratulate them, and I'll say, hey, good job. They're doing things the right way. I think this team looks better this year heading into the season for a couple different reasons. One, you have your same head coach that you had last year, so there's some familiarity there, okay? You're revamping this offense, which is going to limit Matt Stafford, so it's going to force him to put the ball into Kerryon Johnson's hands, and that right there is going to help keep Matt Stafford upright and keep him healthy. And if Matt Stafford is healthy and upright, I think you have a legitimate shot to be a dangerous team, especially in the NFC North. All right. Now, on top of all that, I think your defensive front, I think is sick. You've got 2 Pro Bowl players or 2 guys who put up Pro Bowl numbers in Trey Flowers and Snacks Harrison. On top of that, Darius Slay has been an absolute stud since his rookie season in the NFL. All right? I think you have enough with that defense that you can make some noise. And I expect that defense to not just be top 10. I expect them to be within the top 10. I think they're going to be a top 7 defense this year. I think they're going to cause havoc. I think they're going to be disruptive. All that being said, you now need Matt Stafford and you need that offense to put a couple points on the board, and you need them not to turn the ball over. I think this team is going to be much better than it was last year. All that being said, I don't know if it necessarily translates to wins, and that's kind of the issue here. That's why I'm only going 7-9. I'm like kind of hedging my bet here. I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to look like a much better team. And like you said, I think these games are going to be close. I think they're going to be into it, and it's going to come down to 1 or 2 plays, and that's going to be the difference. I don't see them getting blown out of any games this year. I just don't see that happening. Maybe I'm smoking crack. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see 3 wins. I think if you fall on 3 wins, we're going to be talking about regime changes. We're going to be talking about complete overhaul, even including Bob Quinn, because
there's no way Matt Patricia survives a 3-13 season.
No, heck no, not in 2019. Heck no, and I don't see it happening, barring some massive injury to Stafford or to some of the offensive weapons. I just don't see it. I think the league is set up for you to have 6 wins automatically if you're just semi-decent, and I think the Lions are moving in that direction, especially with the defensive talent that they have. If you just look at the talent that they have, and especially when you realize, okay, last year, was Patricia's first year and he got 6 wins. And so with more of his guys, with more of people that he believes will, toe the line and support the system, I think that if they can stay healthy, I do see a little bit of progression, just not enough yet in terms of a lot of the depth positions in terms of moving forward. So, 3 wins, sometimes maybe. Adam, you and I can maybe acknowledge the fact that he put that out there just to draw attention and realized, okay, you know what? What's the safest, team I can dog and still get a big amount of attention? And he knew Detroit would be perfect because Detroit's rabid, and we'd see that and be like, what the hell? Especially, with the nature of the sports here. I think there's might have been a little bit of clickbait going on, and I think that if you got him drunk and you said, Nate, come on, do you believe 3 wins? He'd be like, hell no, I just wrote that to get some attention. And we're talking about it. The whole country saw that and was like, damn. And I think Detroit was the perfect team for him to maybe crap on just a little bit. But going into training camp, today it opens, first practice. Are you concerned at all? Because everybody freaked out a little bit, and now everybody overreacts. And especially with the Lions, I understand the skepticism. I understand the pessimism. But one of the first things you hear is the reports. Every day, people are put on the PUP list. They're taken off the PUP list. But one of the names early that was put on it that freaked everybody out, that created some very funny GIFs online and memes and all that, was Trey Flowers was put on the PUP list. Now, granted, in March he had shoulder surgery, and I think by and large the reports are that he's going to recover okay, but he's starting training camp on the PUP list. Are you freaking out? Are you going, is this guy starting the DeAndre Levy Ziggy plan, or is this guy going to actually live up to the $90 million contract that he got? Because when you see that, it's just like, come on, obviously, we got to pay attention and be factual. He only got a little bit of work done. It was just basically a cleanup. It wasn't serious, but at the same time, whenever training camp rolls around, you want your new toy to be there. And Trey Flowers to start training camp, not there at Allen Park.
I'm not concerned at all. Here's the thing. Going into that contract signing where Trey Flowers became the $90 million man, Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn knew what he had to have done, knew what was going on, and Trey Flowers has been working with the Lions and has been rehabilitating with the team and the team doctors. He's right where he needs to be. He's on pace. I'm not concerned. I get it. I understand why people get upset and they're like, oh my God, he's on the PUP list. We just signed him to all this. No. Here's the thing. The front office knew what was going on. It was an informed decision that they made. He's been rehabbing. He's on pace. He's on track. It looks like he's going to be fine. Him going on the PUP list is more or less a way to safeguard against him getting hurt or him damaging anything or putting himself behind the 8 ball as far as his rehab goes. I have zero concerns about him being on the PUP list or starting the season on the PUP list. It's fine. I'm assuming that he will come off the PUP list in the next couple weeks, and he will be in training camp with pads on, and it'll be no big deal. Does this concern you?
No, not at all. Obviously, when I saw it, I'm like, oh, of course. You start to believe, okay, with us Lions fans, whenever there's bad news, you're kind of numb to it. You're like, oh, here we go again. I'm just desperately looking for good news. So I was like, all right, Darius Slay, snacks, some positive favors, some positive coverage. Just looking at potentially, I'm looking at right now, day one of training camp. Okay, what if TJ Hawkinson is a supreme blocker? What if Kerryon Johnson is a beast? What if he's able to be that running back? What if Stafford really buys into Darrell Bevel's offense? What if Jelani Tavai is the steal of the draft? I'm right now in the lane of positivity. I'm enjoying the sun. I'm just going to, for the first couple days, get out there to Allen Park and put on my rosy-colored sunglasses before week 2 of training camp, where we can say, okay, Jelani Tavai is slow. He's never going to cover anybody, and to get into all the negativity. But opening day of training camp should be reserved for positivity, and that's what I'm going to take away from the first couple days. At least a couple days. 48 hours is my limit in terms of being positive with the Detroit Lions. I'm going to go into it with a smile on my face and say, you know what? Why not the Detroit Lions? Because I did look, and obviously last year, I was spot on if you read our articles, and check more of them out at DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We're getting more information day in and day out, building our sources and putting out more content. So please go over there, click and read the articles, see the great photos, download the latest podcast anytime, 24 hours a day, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. And so with that, you have the opportunity now with the Detroit Lions to move forward and to change everything and things like that. So I'm really happy with, at this point in time, with what's going on. And so with information regarding the Detroit Lions, in terms of how everything is going, in terms of how Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, it's methodical. I think they will be given time in terms of building everything. And so this training camp, I think one of the things that everybody talks about is just walk away from it healthy. Walk away from everything in a positive way, with nobody getting hurt, with no major injuries, build depth, and to really sustain the defense and the offense in order to move forward. I think that's what everybody's looking at in early parts of training camp. What are you looking for early on in training camp?
What I want to see is, I want to see a guy like TJ Hawkinson. I want to see what he does out there. This was a guy that I don't think either one of us were overly excited when he was drafted. We understood, but nobody ever really wants to see their team take a tight end in the top 10, especially if you're the Lions, because you've been burned by it before. So I want to see what Hawkinson is doing. I want to see what he brings to the team. I want to see how he's going to get integrated. The one thing you don't want to see is TJ Hawkinson out there dropping balls that are gimme catches. Do you know what I'm saying? Because at that point, all of a sudden you have Eric Ebron and Brandon Pettigrew like burned into your brain, and just makes you want to pull your hair out. So I want to see how he fits in. I also want to see how a few of the other early round draft picks kind of slot in, especially a guy like Jelani Tavai. I want to see if he's going to be able to get on the field. This is a guy who we were all scratching our heads, like, who the hell is this guy? And where is he coming from? Hawaii? Who takes a linebacker out of Hawaii? So I want to see how he fits in as well. So those are the two big ones, especially with new faces. I also want to see who's going to line up opposite of Darius Slay. We talked about how good this defense is, and two big question marks for me are right there on defense. Who's going to line up opposite of Darius Slay? Is it Tease Tabor, who had a little bit of a mixed bag as far as OTAs go? There were days where everybody was talking, oh my gosh, it looks like he's turned the corner. Then there are other days where it's, oh my God, he sucks still. So what's it going to be? Which Tease Tabor are we going to get? Is he going to be the guy who's going to line up on the other side of Darius Slay? And those are, I think, my three big questions as we head into training camp. And hopefully we get some answers here soon, and hopefully they're good answers. I mean, look, Tease Tabor really needs to take a step forward. And if he's going to be that guy who's going to be that every down cornerback playing opposite of Darius Slay, you need to see some production from him. You need to see him take that step forward, and it has to be this year. Otherwise, he's a bust. And at that point, you've got to scrap him. You've got to move on from him. And hopefully Jelani Tavai, hopefully he's not out of place. Because the one thing I think you and I both, especially when you draft players, you don't ever want to go to a small school. You prefer drafting from a bigger school, something out of the SEC or the Big Ten. And that's just because the competition in those conferences is so high and it's so elevated. I mean, who the hell did Hawaii really play? You know what I'm saying? The competition, I don't really think, is there every single week. Now, how does that translate when you step on the field in the NFL? So it's going to be interesting to see how he acclimates himself, and hopefully he can get on the field, and hopefully he's productive. But it's mostly, my questions are in that tight end group, because that group was severely lacking last year, and then the linebacking core and who's playing opposite Darius Slay. Those are my big question marks. What has you concerned, or what has you intrigued as we head into training camp? Is there like one position or one player that
no doubt about it
has to perform?
Yes, in prep and preparing for training camp, a lot of people are talking about the fact that the offensive line is going to have some shuffle to it. They're going to want some of these guys to play multiple roles, and I think that ideally, that sounds great. You want an offensive lineman to be flexible. You want him to be able to fit multiple schemes and be able to do a lot of things. Have we seen that here in Detroit? Not really. So that's the part where I understand the idea behind it. I understand that you might want to take some of the talent and move them around and see what they're able to do. But especially knowing last year, cause that Stafford broke his back, had broken bones, the number one goal in terms of all the Detroit Lions and the organization is keep Stafford upright, keep him healthy, do not lose this guy. And when you shuffle around the offensive line, it's a real scary proposition, especially when you recognize the Detroit Lions historically just don't have dominant offensive lines. I mean, literally last year when we were recording the podcast for 5 years, there was one running back that had a 100-yard game. There were so few positive, dominant offensive line plays that you would say, oh my gosh, now you want to kind of advance the schemes. You want to move people around. It's just a scary proposition. So I want to see who moves where, how that position group looks. Is the running game going to work? Because ideally, you and I, and the Detroit Lions can ideally say, okay, we want to have a run control offense. We want Stafford to dink and dunk it. We want to score a bunch of points. But to go out there and execute it is a whole other game. And like I said, I would not be surprised if, early on in training camp, you just see a bunch of 3-yard runs, struggles, penalties until they gel and figure stuff out. So I just want to see who's playing where on the offensive line, and can they, obviously in training camp it's vanilla and they don't show a lot, but can we at least see glimpses? Can you at least blow someone out in terms of the offensive line versus the defensive line? Can you look good? Can we see signs? Can we see reports that the Detroit Lions offensive line is doing some things? And I'll be happy.
Yeah, I'm expecting struggles too. What I'm really expecting is bland, vanilla, super generic. Basically, you're going to line up in one way, and then you're going to run like a halfback dive. And I think a lot of it is just going to be hat-on-hat type of football, right? So your offensive linemen are going to line up across from whoever it is on the defensive line, and your job is basically to blow him off the ball. And that's what they're going to be looking for. And if you can blow your man off the ball, hopefully the design run is to your gap, and hopefully the running back can move the ball down the field that way. All fans are like, oh, my God, did you see Kerryon Johnson picked up 6 yards on that one play? When in reality, we're all just kind of like, okay, cool. The offensive lineman won that battle up front, and that's why he was able to move the ball down the field. So same thing, right? You just want to see these guys winning these battles when they're lining up across from whoever's in front of them. And that's kind of the thing that I think you need to take out of training camp and take out of preseason football. Don't look at what the actual production numbers are, because they don't mean a thing. It's super generic stuff. You're looking for explosiveness. You're looking for guys winning battles. You're looking for guys to actually win jobs and add depth to this team. I mean, I think we all know Darius Slay is going to be your starting cornerback. He is the best guy in that group. Who's going to start opposite of him? You're looking at that guy, whoever it may be. It could be a rookie. You never know. It could be Justin Coleman. You never know. So that's kind of what I would say, and that's kind of how I would, as we go into this, because I always find it funny. Preseason football rolls around, and everybody freaks out because the Lions either look like trash or things aren't really going great, and they're like, oh, it's going to be a horrible season. It's going to be absolutely awful. Is it, though? Is it going to be absolutely awful? Because it's preseason football. What are we talking about here, guys? It doesn't mean anything. It's all made up. It's all pretend. So you just go win battles and blow the guy up across from you. That's what I'm looking for.
Now, obviously, we would be remiss by not talking about Matthew Stafford, but I do want to table that discussion because I want to see.
You do?
I do.
I thought this was a great question that you posed.
Yes.
I think it's very interesting.
Yes, and I want to give it the time that it deserves. So I want to table it because I do want to discuss Stafford, and I think maybe we can expand upon it and talk even more in depthly too, because I do think Stafford is working his way in terms of his perception to kind of being, upper echelon, working his way to like the top 10, 9 quarterbacks. But right now there's these couple young cats like Baker Mayfield that are coming up and people are really, really high on. So I kind of want to discuss with you next week for sure. So put that down. Kind of where where Stafford fits in terms of the NFL. Is he a top 6? Is he 6 to 12? Can he compete with Baker Mayfield? Because of the fact that every year all we talk about is, this quarterback earned his first playoff win. Why can't Stafford? I do want to discuss where realistically does Stafford fit now with the skills that he has. And I think with information regarding what we're seeing first week of training camp, we can add that flavor to the discussion. But the topic will be, how does Stafford compare to Baker Mayfield? Because of the fact that right now Baker Mayfield is the hot stud that everybody's talking about, and Stafford's the guy that everyone kind of goes, well, when's he going to do more? Or, hey, this is a guy that's a corner piece around him. So I want to have a much more detailed conversation regarding that, and I can't wait for next week's podcast. So stay tuned for that. I do want to give love to the sponsors who make it possible for Adam to be in Indiana and me to be here and for us to broadcast. I want to thank the Motor City Pawnbrokers, and I want to thank the Flick Chat application. The Motor City Pawnbrokers are the one-stop pawn shop when you're in need of short-term cash or are looking for quality brand-name new and pre-owned merchandise. With locations in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren, their mission is to deliver exceptional value. For all information regarding the Motor City Pawnbrokers, go check out MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. That's MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. Go visit the site today. If you've agreed or disagreed with anything that Adam and I have said during this week's episode or any episode that you download, go head on over and download Flick. All you got to do is go to either Google, the Google Play Store, the App Store, and type in Flick Chat, and you can be in the group within moments. And the Detroit Sports Podcast headquarters group is really fun. We talk about the topics on the podcast. We have great debates. If you're a fan of professional wrestling, we're watching all the shows and commenting. If you have a podcast and you want to promote it, please go there, share your content. They're a great sponsor of the network, and we really enjoy talking and connecting with the fans. Flick Chat, a great Detroit Sports Group headquarters that you can join instantly.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah, that's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out, let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel, a bit unstable.
All right, cuz second half of the podcast, we got to talk about the college football game. Now, Jim Harbaugh did make some news. I do think a lot of people are viewing it as overblown regarding media days. But this week, we're going to talk about Michigan State. And next week, we'll dive into Michigan and Michigan State combined and some expectations and things like that. A real deep dive next week. But this week, after we talked Michigan last week, I do want to get your sense, because obviously you know where I stand. I think it's all rosy. I think it's all going to be great. It's going to be good news for the Spartans in terms of a rebound year. Now, can they meet the ultimate goals? I'll tease that, and I'll let you go first. What's your take on Michigan State entering 2019? Do they rebound? Do they have the talent? Do they have the necessary offensive weapons to go to Ann Arbor? And really, one of the big goals for Michigan State always is to beat Michigan. Do you think this is a rebound season for Michigan State? And can Mark D'Antonio really turn things around? Because by all accounts, one of the strengths of the team is going to be that defense. Can that offense turn it around? Can they make some noise? Can Lewerke rebound? A lot of question marks, but I do think the Spartans are like one of those great stocks that you can buy for $2, and at the end of the year, it could be worth $25. So, but at the same time, with Michigan State and with the Lions too, you could buy it at $2, and within a moment, it goes to -5 and the company's bankrupt. So it's a gamble, but I would say if you're a Spartan, I think it's worth paying attention and being a fan this year of the Spartans.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a rebound season for Mark D'Antonio and the Michigan State Spartans. I don't know if they win the Big Ten, and you're going to tease that, and you're going to talk about that here in a moment. But I think what you said though is accurate. I think it all comes down to that offense. going into this season, we know that Mark D'Antonio has a great defense. That defense is going to be the calling card of this team. It's what can that offense bring to the table? It's what can that offense help this defense do? If this offense looks like it looked not last year, but the year prior, where Brian Lewerke looked like he was going to be the second coming of a quarterback, this team's going to be in a really solid spot. If this offense looks like it looked last year, where Brian Lewerke should have been sitting on the bench for the majority of the season, then this team's not going to go anywhere. So I think everything's going to kind of fall on this offense. And for me, the two reasons that the Michigan State Spartans can get a win in Ann Arbor are, one, Brian Lewerke. If he shows up and he plays like he played not last season, but the season prior, this team and this offense are going to be in a really, really good position, because you already know this defense is going to help them win games. This defense is going to keep this team accountable, and this defense is going to keep this team in the hunt, especially in the Big Ten East. So if Brian Lewerke can show up and he can play, then I think Michigan State is in a prime spot to make a lot of noise in the Big Ten. The other thing that's going to help contribute to them possibly getting a win in Ann Arbor is coaching. Mark D'Antonio essentially took all the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, and he was like, cool, let me move all these around, and let's see if we get a better result by putting other guys in charge of other things. So if his move pays off by basically not blowing any of his coaches out, by sticking with the same guys, and just kind of redoing their roles and revamping their roles, if that pays off, man, that one, it's gutsy. Two, it just shows you how in tune he is with what he's got going on with his program. And three, you need those guys you need those moves to work out. You really do. If you're a Michigan State fan, you need those coaching changes to really, really work out and impact this offense in a positive nature, because it's going to all come down to this offense. We know what's going to happen with this defense. It's going to be a good defense, if not a great defense. This was a top 5, top 3 defense last year. So you're expecting something similar this year. It's just, what can that offense do? And does this offense put that defense in a bad spot time in and time out? And as long as that offense doesn't do that to the defense, Michigan State has a real possibility to not just get a win in Ann Arbor, but to win the Big Ten East and then go on and play for a Big Ten championship in Indianapolis. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's possible.
Kenny Willekes is poised to lead that defense. Brian Lewerke is poised to lead that offense. I think a couple of reasons why Michigan State has success, like you said, is coaching, but also I think that Mark D'Antonio, in terms of philosophy, if it's executed well, tends to have what it takes to win games in terms of running the ball, controlled offense, and then having a stellar defense. I really think that defense, by all accounts, last year was really nationally elite. Everyone talked about it, and if you can continue to grow, if you can continue to put the pressure on, Mark D'Antonio is a wizard. And at the same time, I do think that this rivalry with Michigan, the ebbs and flows are really awesome. And last year, I don't discount the fact that Michigan went in there to East Lansing, and then when the news was made regarding stomping the S, and everyone made a big hullabaloo about all the Spartans holding hands, and Michigan broke that up and caused a little bit of a scuffle. I think Mark D'Antonio is going to use that as extreme motivation, and especially with the fact that now, what are you all hearing? The hype is really strong regarding Michigan, and I think Mark D'Antonio loves that. He loves every day to wake up and open the paper and seeing that Jim Harbaugh's like, yeah, we're the Big Ten champs. We should be favorite. We should be the team. We're going to do all these things. And I think Mark D'Antonio is going to use that as motivation for his squad. And I think, too, whenever the chips have been down, whenever people are ready to write off Mark D'Antonio, you get this surprise season where they go, 10, 11 wins and they have success. So I think this is one of those years where if everything holds true, I do see key losses, mounting up. I don't see an undefeated season. I don't see them winning the Big Ten. But I do think they do get 10 wins out of this schedule. If everything holds true, I think Michigan State has a strong chance to compete with Michigan. It's just always hard when you go to Ann Arbor, especially with the motivation and things like that. It's really, really a tough. I think they're even. I think that, again, it's going to come down to a couple plays. Maybe this year we can get a repeat and get some nasty weather, and it can be a running game contest, and Michigan State could compete there as well, especially with Brian Lewerke. He's an athlete. He can do some things as well. The thing that scares me, no real change in terms of offense, in terms of the minds. All you did was, shuffle the deck and move your friends around. And many people, in terms of taking the program to the next level, we say, okay, yeah, it's good to be in the mix for the Big Ten. It's good to be in the mix for Indianapolis. But if you want to take Michigan State from where they were from the time they won the Big Ten and got to the playoff, if you want to take them to the likes of a Clemson, to the likes of an Alabama, to be in that class, to be even talked about in that class, you got to retool that offense and get with the times. Many people will be skeptical that running the ball, ground and pound, and this ball control offense and not taking supreme chances, because there are colleges that are racking up 80 points a game, throwing the ball 50 and 60 times a game, taking advantage of the rules. And it just feels like Michigan and Michigan State are living in the 70s in terms of offense. And so that will be the biggest thing. Two of the biggest reasons I think they don't beat Michigan are the fact that the coaches aren't good enough and the offense is too antiquated. They won't call quality plays. They won't do enough to surprise the defense. I think they're going to say, look, this is what we do. We're going to line up and run the ball. We're going to tell you we're going to do that. Try and stop it. And I just don't want to see third and longs because of the fact you ran the ball on first and second down. I just need some offensive ingenuity. You got to be creative. It's an offensive time. It's so crazy that it's an offensive explosion. All these great teams are dropping millions of points in the NFL and in college. And we support the Lions and the Spartans, myself, and we can't score points. And we're going to be like, probably creaming in our pants if we score 21 points. It's going to be like, come on, man. Get with the times. I just hope that the Spartans can do that. I think they finished second in the East. You can't realistically predict anybody outside of Ohio State, even though they do got a rookie coach and things like that. It wasn't like he's an outsider. He's a guy that ran the offense. He's a guy that
Michigan State finishes behind Ohio State or behind Michigan?
They finished behind Ohio State. It's Ohio State, Michigan State is how I see it shaken down. And
so Michigan finishes in third again?
I think so. I think Michigan finished. I think Michigan finishes behind Michigan State. Or we could say, you know what? To start our talks in college football, they'll finish tied for second with Michigan State.
If you're a Michigan fan, is that an improvement or not? I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't know. It'll be a fascinating look. But, it'll be fascinating because it's a big. Actually, both coaches. We'll finish with this. Which coach has more pressure on him to have a better year? Is it Harbaugh?
Ooh.
Is it Harbaugh or is it D'Antonio, who's now on the verge of potentially losing a fan base because of the fact that there's been a pinpointed issue that he's failed to address? And when you're stubborn to that degree, and we're Spartan fans going, dude, you have the best defense in all the country. You got talent. If you're not going to evolve, if we're going to get more of the same, sometimes you got to say, it's time to move on. Time for the next guy. And at the same time, Harbaugh is a guy that's under the hot seat. People are not talking about Indy. They just want, get to Indy and then, take it to the next level. They're ready to put it into overdrive. So both coaches got a ton of pressure on them. It's going to be fascinating to see how they handle it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think you would see, if we were to put this up as a Twitter poll question, I think it would be split right down the fan base lines, because if you're a Michigan State fan, you're going to say it's D'Antonio. He has to win this year. He has to show a marked improvement over what he did last year. And if you're a Michigan fan, it's all or nothing for you this year. Like, if you're not going to win this year, when are you going to win? If you're not going to beat Ohio State and Michigan State and Notre Dame, when are you going to do all these things? When? Because you have all these guys coming to your house, and you're going up against Ohio State, who has a rookie head coach, and you're going up against a Michigan State team that is coming off of a very down year. So if not, win. So it'd be fascinating to see it, because I think it would be split right down the middle. If you're a Michigan State fan, you're voting for D'Antonio. If you're a Michigan fan, you're definitely voting for Harbaugh.
Oh, great podcast. The hour went by faster than when you're here. That was crazy. That was fun. That was good.
Do you want to talk about Asian massage parlors and what you're doing hanging out in front of them?
So the best part of that story was, obviously from time to time you read the newspaper and you see stuff, and you read the two places I go to the most are Detroit News, Detroit Free Press, and WXYZ is where I get a lot of the news from. And so I saw Troy Asian Masseuse Parlor is shut down. I saw it early on Tuesday morning that it's shut down because of the fact that, hey, some guy went in there, 68 years old, from Macomb Township, and the police from time to time, in terms of their enforcement of the rules of these Asian masseuse places, what they do is they randomly go in there and they bust into the rooms. Well, unfortunately for this guy, and that's always a funny thing too, because that's what the first thought was, like, man, imagine you're getting that done and someone walks in on you. That's got to be pretty awkward. But the police did a random raid. They found out this guy was getting serviced by the masseuse, and among other violations of having masseuses with no license, they shut the place down. So I read up on it and I'm like, wait a minute. Troy, Long Lake. I'm like, that's literally a mile and a half up the road. So I Googled it.
It's right by.
It's right by
the office.
Exactly. So I drove right by it. I'm like, oh, the city slapped a suspended license on the place. And like I said, I'll be open and honest. I've never been to one of those places for that. I've never been to an Asian masseuse parlor. Most of the parlors I go to are a little bit more upstanding, and no one's ever offered that kind of service for me. So it's fascinating that it's still going on in these times.
Does your wife even offer you HJs?
So she's like, oh, nowadays you're going to get a massage? Oh, hell no. So the only massage I'm allowed to get now is if she's there with me. Right there next to me. Right there next to me.
The couples massage.
Like I said, I don't know the flow of how that interaction goes. And so, especially now, I'm paranoid. It won't work anymore.
I'm just interested. How do you go from getting your back rubbed to then flipping over and being like, so are you going to take care of that or no?
Exactly.
How do you even proposition that? Exactly.
I think the lead maybe has to be taken place by the masseuse. They just maybe have a code or a hint or something like that. I don't know. It's a fascinating question. I think it's crazy, literally, that stuff goes on now, especially knowing that the police can just show up whenever you want. I don't want that stuff happening. I think for the Asian, and this is the other too. I do believe, you and I believe, that Asians, for the most part, are smart individuals. They're hardworking. They know what they're doing. Isn't it surprising that in 2019 they haven't figured out how to, manage this service without getting caught? I mean, you don't do it. You don't, yeah, right? It's like,
manage this service. Like it's somebody coming up to cut your lawn.
Yeah. Don't you think they should, at this point in time, in my opinion, figure out a way to get all together, meet, over, some food and some delicious content, and be like, okay, we'll have a certain section of these people that go to your house or that will provide the massage here, not where the police can just randomly bust in. I just think there's got to be a better way for the service to take place. Or at this point in time, with all the money and resources that the Asians have, why aren't they lobbying to make it legal? I literally should expect, a short Asian lawyer to be up in Congress being like, come on, guys, what's the big deal? The guy's 68. He's never going to get no action. What's the harm? They should be in 2019. What's all their money going to? They should lobby to make it legal.
Sometimes the things you say, I feel like if this was like a radio station, we'd be in so much trouble. It's a good thing we're a podcast.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No, it's true, because you think about it. What's the harm in it, really? I mean, come on. It's like it's. I
mean, yeah, I don't see a harm in it, right?
I don't see a harm in it. It should be.
He's just gonna go home and tug himself, so why not let her tug him?
Right, exactly. So they should be taking care of this a little bit better, and for the Asian masseuse convention, if there is one, they should be talking about the important stuff, not the chairs and the the rent spaces and those kind of costs. They should be talking about how do we quadruple our income, make that shit legal.
Make that shit legal. I think this is where we go out on make that shit legal.
Make that shit legal, baby. You've listened to Doc and Jock. You can find the podcast anywhere podcasts are streamed. We greatly appreciate you finding us. All you got to do is subscribe. Go to your favorite place, hit the subscribe button. The podcast will find you. We broadcast every single day, and you'll enjoy the content. If you like it or don't like it, feel free. Leave a review. We read everything. We enjoy the content, and we enjoy the conversation with the supporters. You can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. We'll talk to everybody next week. I look forward to it. Bye, Adam.
This was Locker Room Talk.
Second deck.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.